Greetings, boys and babes. It's the Magic Hour, a place where we navigate through life's peaks and valleys with all the vulnerability and shamelessness we can muster. With the help of world-class guests from all walks of life, we uncover new truths and valuable tools for manifesting our highest potential. I'm your host, Mercedes Terrell, along with my partner in Shine, Jade Bryce.
Hi, you guys. In April, I participated in Unify's global meditation event. It was a 12-hour event during quarantine, so we all tuned in through Facebook Live. I turned it on when it first began, thinking I'd just pop in and out, but I was immediately hooked. Each speaker gave so much hope in the middle of so much panic and fear, and each guest was so amazing, and we have booked a few of them for the show. The first guest from the event is a man from the HeartMath Institute.
Yes, I can't wait. And the HeartMath experience you're about to hear about is especially appropriate during these times for maintaining emotional balance, mental clarity, and sustaining resilience. The content is so uplifting and provides scientifically validated tools for managing stress and anxiety, which we need now more than ever. So why don't we get him on so we can get into what he's all about?
Yes. Our guest today is the HeartMath Institute Research Director and is letting the world know why heart coherence is essential in stress management and sustainable behavior change. He and his team are passionate about helping individuals, organizations, and the global community incorporate the heart's intelligence into their day-to-day experience of life to develop innovative solutions to challenges, increase cooperation, and live healthier, more fulfilling lives through empowering people to self-regulate their emotions and behaviors to reduce stress, increase resilience, and unlock their natural, intuitive guidance for making more effective choices. There have been over 300 peer-reviewed or independent studies published utilizing HeartMath techniques and technologies to achieve beneficial outcomes. HeartMath's research on personal, social, and global coherence shows how we can become more empowered directors of our future and the quality of our lives, knowing that as more of us cooperate and connect from the heart, together we can create a more compassionate world filled with true care and harmonious interactions. He and the HeartMath are helping to activate the heart of humanity. We are so excited to welcome Rollin McCraty to the Magic Hour. I feel like that's a really long bio.
It's good though.
Yeah.
Let me do one more.
Okay.
I wish this chair didn't squeak like farts. Can you hear it a lot
It
when
is,
I move?
yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't do it. Hello and welcome, boys and babes. It's the Magic Hour, a place where we navigate through life's peaks and valleys with all the vulnerability and shamelessness we can muster. With the help of world-class guests from all walks of life, we uncover new truths and valuable tools for manifesting our highest potential. I'm your host, Mercedes Terrell, along with my partner in Shine, Jade Bryce.
Hi, you guys. In April, I participated in Unify's global meditation event. It was a 12-hour event during quarantine, so we all tuned in through Facebook Live. I turned it on when it first began, thinking I would pop in and out, but I was immediately hooked. Each speaker gave so much hope in the middle of so much panic and fear, and each guest was so amazing, and we've booked a few of them for the show. The first guest from the event is a man from the HeartMath Institute.
Yes, I can't wait. And the HeartMath experience you're about to hear about is especially appropriate during these times for maintaining emotional balance, mental clarity, and sustaining resilience. The content is so uplifting and provides scientifically validated tools for managing stress and anxiety, which we need now more than ever. So why don't we get him on so he can tell us about it himself?
Our guest today is the HeartMath Institute Research Director and is letting the world know why heart coherence is essential in stress management and sustainable behavior change. He and his team are passionate about helping individuals, organizations, and the global community incorporate the heart's intelligence into their day-to-day experience of life to develop innovative solutions to challenges, increase cooperation, and live healthier, more fulfilling lives through empowering people to self-regulate their emotions and behaviors to reduce stress, increase resilience, and unlock their natural, intuitive guidance for making more effective choices.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, I love the books. So,
Oh, that was books. Okay.
Yeah, it's a great backdrop.
My office.
So Mercedes, do you need him to check his video setting at all?
Yeah. Hi, Roland. If you could just check on where there should be a little video camera icon on the bottom left of your screen, and there's a little arrow next to it to the right. If you click on that, there should be a video settings option.
Mm-hmm.
And then in there, there is a HD, enable HD is what it says. If you could just make sure that's enabled.
All right. I will enable it for this.
Thank you.
There we go. Awesome. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah. So we'll just, we'll read a bio and then we'll just start jumping into the questions if that's okay.
Yep. And one of the, okay, sorry, it doesn't matter what they are. I'll answer them.
You know all the answers, we promise.
That's funny. Okay.
This is just, let me review. What's this show for? The audience here?
Our show is called The Magic Hour. We most often rank in the top 50 of the philosophy section, but our audience is really a wide range.
It's fairly eclectic, Rollin, but it's you're probably asking how in depth into the science of this that you want to get with our audience.
Yeah.
I would keep this on a more basic level. Again, we are a really eclectic audience, so there's going to be some that can go there, but we'll try to probe you in if we want to go deeper on certain subjects that we feel like will resonate with them, we'll ask you for that. Cool?
God, I need a haircut.
All of us.
We all do.
Virus hairdos all over everywhere. Oh,
my waves it. Yeah, my brows are waving at you guys.
It's been in 30 years.
It looks great.
And how many viewers do you typically have?
We typically have around 6,000, but right now because of the virus, people aren't commuting and they're home with their kids, so our numbers are a little bit down. So we might air this a little bit later when the numbers go back up. Not too much later, but we're kind of feeling that out.
Okay. Yeah. I would have thought the numbers would be up. People are home, you know.
That's what I thought. Yeah, but all of our friends that have podcasts are saying the same thing.
Yeah. So when you say podcast, I think of audio only, but is this audio or is it visual as well?
So
we do.
Sorry, we just opened our YouTube channel. We haven't actually posted much on there yet, but this is going to be recorded for both, so it'll be audio and visual.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, awesome.
If I draw pictures with my hands, I can't see it. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I do that a lot.
Yeah, think of it more as audio for sure, but we are going to use your face at least for our promo videos, little clips that we'll take from this. But we will post the entire episode on YouTube as well.
Yeah, and those promo clips between all of our social accounts, it's about 10 million viewers. So the promo clips do get a lot of views. So
awesome.
Yeah,
okay.
Awesome.
So the Magic Hour. Huh?
Yeah.
The Magic Hour. MAJIC for Mercedes and Jade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mercedes, you want me to read the whole intro or just start with he and the HeartMath?
Yeah, I think let's take the whole intro and then
Okay.
jump into it from there.
All right.
I need to make shorter bios then.
Our bio is not short.
No, that's what I mean, because it's just too much time taken up with that stuff usually. But
Do you want us to just skip it? We totally can just get into the question.
Or do a short version. Do whatever you normally do.
I'll just read the last sentence.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. He and the HeartMath are helping to activate the heart of humanity. We are so excited to welcome Rollin McCraty to the Magic Hour.
Hi, Rollin.
Well, good day.
Hi.
Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, I was telling our listeners before you jumped on that I heard you speak at the Unify Global Meditation Day, and it was so amazing. So can you let our listeners know what HeartMath does and what their mission is?
Sure. Well, our kind of easy way to say our mission is awakening the heart of humanity. And what we do is not so easy to say in a sentence because we're involved in so many aspects of society. But basically, we're a research facility, HeartMath Institute is, that really has deeply studied how the heart and brain communicate and the physiology of emotion. We're basically a psychophysiology laboratory group. And from that deeper understanding, and a lot of surprises has come out of that work, we've developed a set of tools and techniques that allow people to more quickly and deeply align with the intuitive intelligence of their heart, and how to bring that into really improving our capacity to self-regulate. In other words, how do we navigate the stresses of life with more grace and ease, but in a very practical, user-friendly way. So these techniques can be worded slightly different, but the same essence for everything from kindergarten students to generals in the military and CEOs and doctors and everything in between. It's really how do we shift our inner physiology into what we call a coherent state where everything's more harmoniously working together, which maximizes our mental functions. So better decision making, more access to intuition. And then by doing that, there's over 400 independent studies now of using our methods in all kinds of things like better health outcomes, lowered blood pressure, better hormonal balance, improvements in heart failure, lowered blood pressure, but also in helping students perform better at school, academic performance, but also especially in the mental emotional area. So more social harmony, not just kids, but kids and high school students, but adults in whatever context, work together more harmoniously as teams and groups. So more collaboration emerges from this as well. We even work with the Navy SEALs, in terms of creating more coherence within the groups and teams there. So that's why I say it's kind of hard to pin down to one thing, because we work in education, healthcare, general stress reduction contexts. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a not too long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's perfect. What is heart rhythm and how does it affect us?
All right. So what is heart rhythm? So I'm gonna dial that one back and ask another question before that, which you'd probably ask me anyway, which is what is heart rate variability?
Okay. Yes.
Because without heart rate variability, we don't have a heart rhythm. So in a healthy person, well, let me start with this. So most people know what heart rate is. I mean, I think knows that, right? But it's just simply how many times did the heart beat in 1 minute. And that's why we call it beats per minute. That's why you can feel your pulse and time it and get your basic heart rate. However, in a healthy person, somebody, especially, it's even a measure of our resilience and our aging in a way, but our heart rate changes with each and every heartbeat. So that's what's called heart rate variability. So to measure that, it's a lot harder, if you will, or you have to be a lot more precise than heart rate. So you have to very accurately measure the time interval between each and every consecutive heartbeat. And when you do that, it's in time, right? In milliseconds, you find that there's variation. That's always changing. And that's when we measure it at that level, that's what's called heart rate variability. Now, so we can, this is where graphs are worth 1,000 words, right? So you can see the heartbeats plotted and you measure the time and you plot a graph on top of that shows how these interbeat intervals, as we call them, or this heart rate variability is changing. And what you see is that that's where the rhythm comes from. And there's different amplitudes of rhythm. In other words, the more variability we have, the more beat to beat changes. And in a young person, most people are surprised. When I say young person, somebody like in their 30s, right? That just natural setting still variability can be 30 beats per minute, up and down, just naturally changing. Now, as we get older, almost in a linear relationship, the amount of that variability decreases. So it's one of the very best measures we have of aging is variability. Now, if the time between each pair of heartbeats was the same, right, when you made that plot, it would be a flat line. There would be no variability and there would be no heart rhythm. So it's this beat to beat change in heart rate that actually creates what we all tend to think of as the heart rhythm. Does that answer your question? So when it comes to heart rate variability, clinically speaking, it's really a very powerful tool for not only measuring like our aging process, or are we aging at the normal rate that we would expect from normal healthy people, but is the amount of the variability we have lower than it should be for our age?
And so the rhythm, Jade was asking about the rhythm and how it affects us of our heart. So is the rhythm is determined by the heart rate variability?
Right. It's produced by it. Without variability, there is no heart rhythm. Is basically what I'm saying.
So what kind of rhythm or what kind of heart rate variability are we looking for as a person, let's call it for Jade and I in our 30s, what is ideal there?
That's what I was just getting ready to answer.
Okay.
Okay.
We would measure how much variation there is. And the easiest way to think of it is you can look at a waveform of the variability. In your 30s, you would expect about 20 to 30 beats per minute of variation going on.
Okay.
And now if it's lower than it should be for your age, that's a huge risk factor. That says, oh, something's wrong.
Okay.
In fact, lower variability will drop out like that, lower than it should be for your natural age decline, several years before symptoms. So lowered amount of variability. There's two answers to your question, so I'm just going to be brief here. But if we have a lower amount of it for our age, that has been associated and predictive of almost every major disease that you can think.
Oh, wow.
Cancer, and it could be up to years predicting.
Up to several years before you actually have the symptoms. So it's a great early warning. So I'm talking about sudden death, cancer, metabolic syndrome, diabetes. I mean, major things that HRV is associated with. Okay, so that's kind of the clinical medical tool we would use for risk assessment. Now, a deeper answer to, I think, the question you're asking me is when we look at not only the how much, but at a little bit deeper level, this is really more directly to your rhythm question. If we look at, actually, this is where, again, graphs are worth 1,000 words here. If we look at the rhythm, it actually has a pattern to it, independent of how much, right? So you could be an old fart like me, and compared to you guys anyway, and I would have probably about half of the amount of variability that you guys would, you youngsters. But independent of that, we could both have the same or similar patterns. Okay. Now here's where it gets, I don't want to go too much into the science here, but the pattern of the variability literally is reflecting many things about what's going on inside of our body. So when we're feeling something like an emotion like anxiety or frustration or impatience, feeling overwhelmed, not that you guys ever have any of those feelings. What happens, what you see is the pattern of the rhythm becomes what we call incoherent or very chaotic looking. Now what that is telling us, quite literally as a measure of, is that the activity, the communication between the heart and brain and what's going on in our nervous system is out of sync. It's, have you ever heard people talk about, God, my nerves feel frazzled? Yeah. Or I just feel out of sync. We use those words because we intuitively know that actually is literally what's happening. So the different systems within the body are not working together harmoniously. So the heart's pretty unique in that it's connected to so many other systems in the body that input it to reflect this in our heart rhythms. Now, on the other hand, if you're feeling something like you walk out the door in the morning and you go, God, what a beautiful day, right? The sun shining and all that. I mean, it's just those feelings we have. Heart rhythm most likely shifts into a very different pattern that we call coherence. And it's a very kind of smooth up and down, kind of rolling hills, sine wave-like looking rhythm.
And what exactly is coherence? Okay,
so that's what we call a coherent rhythm. Okay, so what is coherence? Well, at a high level, if you look it up in the dictionary, the first definition almost everywhere is relative to the quality of somebody's speech, writing, right? So we're having a conversation now. So hopefully I'm putting my words together in sentence structures that convey a meaning, a coherent meaning that's above and beyond all little individual words. Make sense?
We understand. Yeah.
That you'll understand that it conveys a coherent, a complete meaning,
thought,
concept. Now, of course, if I'd have had, too much to drink last night or, it's kind of early in the morning, but anyway, and I'm uttering nonsense, what would you say?
You're incoherent.
Incoherent. So that's the most kind of general meaning, but we also use that term in physics, but it's really similar in a way. So in science and physics, coherence is a broad term that is used to describe complex systems that have lots of parts that have to work together. Like us, we're really complex systems, right? So that means it's a measure of all the subparts. How well are they communicating with each other, and are they working together harmoniously? And are those parts creating a function that's above and beyond the individual parts? So it has to do with the wholeness, the order and harmony within a complex system. So where all the subparts give rise to something greater than their individual parts. And then the other thing it always implies, is we're talking about a coherent system, is energy efficiency.
So
Does that make sense?
It all makes complete sense. So I'm just wondering, and having a coherency to your heart essentially is what we're talking about here, right? This is what allows us to, well, I'm just trying to say, is it backwards to say that this is what allows us stress management and sustainable behavior change, or vice versa? Like, what do we have to figure?
Well, it's both. Okay, so we're a complex system. So let me see if I can say this in a simpler way. When we're feeling those emotions, so what we call stress, you know, if we say, okay, what's under the hood of stress? What's that really mean? It's always an emotion. You're stressing me out, but what are we really saying? You're frustrating me. You're not doing what I want, and that's causing me frustration.
Right.
Or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling like there's not enough time. You know, that's how we define time pressure, the feeling of not having enough time.
Yeah.
So it's always in an emotion. Or that, you know, those legal ones, like I'm in traffic and there's the traffic jam, right? So there comes the impatience. Right? So hang on.
Go ahead.
Let me just finish here. So what I'm saying is those types of feelings are literally, that are experiencing our brain, are driving our different parts of our system into incoherence, inefficiency. And we see that reflected in the heart rhythms as these incoherent patterns. So it's literally meaning we actually say sometimes, God, my brain was scrambled. Ever have that? Maybe
Yeah.
Well, we literally are. Right? Because at a physiological level, whereas other emotions that we call regenerative emotions, reflect in the physiology in more coherence. The immune system, hormonal system, all of these systems, nervous system, are working together more harmoniously, which is reflected in the heart in a coherent rhythm. But it's especially the communication between the heart and brain.
That's why they say stress is the #1 killer.
Yeah.
Then, because
but over time, if we're stressed a lot, feeling frustrated, angry, impatient, anxious, that's driving our system into inefficient states. We're having to use more energy to get the same amount of stuff done. And over time, that just keeps depleting and wear and tear on the system. So then that pops out whatever, however that's supposed to be.
I guess so our heart is always trying to bring us back to this homeostasis of the coherent state. Is that to be believed?
Yeah. So so now we need to so the heart and brain, are wired together. I'm going to use that term here, through nerves, more intensely or more closely coupled than any other systems in the body. Now, this may surprise you, but the heart actually sends more information to the brain through our nervous system than the brain sends to the heart.
Wow. That's why you call it the intelligent heart at HeartMath, right?
But it's part of it. It's part of it. But so this goes, and this is not new. I mean, that may sound like some new discovery. God, the heart sends more to the brain. This has actually been known since the late 1800s. This is not a new discovery. In fact, the father, who's considered the father of psychology, knew this, and a lot of that was based on that. And that's William James was his name. And that was up until the 1920s and 30s when we started learning more, and the paradigm shifted. It's all about the brain. And a lot of what came before that was forgotten, but was actually right. Because we got englamored. But anyway, so I don't want to get too far into that. But the signals that I'll call it the quality, which is reflected in the pattern of the neural activity that the heart sends to the brain, literally goes to every major brain center. So the activity of the heart, the quality of those signals, this is going back to the 70s now, was discovered to have profound effects on brain function. And two terms were introduced way back then, long before I got involved, right? I'm still in high school at that time. That's called cortical inhibition. In other words, the cortex, the top of our brain that we get paid to go to work for, right, is inhibited. We can't think clearly. We can't make good decisions. Or the other term was called cortical facilitation. So guess what? As it turns out, a coherent rhythm is one that facilitates brain function, showing that we're all in sync. And an incoherent rhythm is the one, they didn't know this back then, but we know now, that is associated with cortical inhibition.
Okay.
Let me give it a practice. I'll ask you guys a question here.
Okay.
Are you up for an honesty test?
Sure.
Always.
All right. Excuse me. First question, two parts. Have you ever been in a situation where you were talking with maybe your boyfriends or somebody that, you know, close to you, and they said or did something that just upset you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you blurted that, but you blurt something out that a minute later or so, you're saying to yourself, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that or did
Yeah.
that.
We triggered into some old
Yeah,
pattern.
you got triggered, and then comes out the thing you may not have even really meant.
Yeah.
That creates a bunch more stress and all that. Okay, well, here's the honesty question. Have you done it more than once with the same person around the very same issue?
Yes.
All right, right. I mean, it's kind of humor. We've all done that, right? That's cortical inhibition.
Okay.
So you see, we get angry or upset. Cortex is inhibited. Now we're responding from our emotional centers, unmanaged emotional centers. On the other hand, we can be in a so what our techniques teach people how to do is to recognize when those triggers are starting to rise up. You know, we feel them, but we're so automated, right? But we can learn how to pause, do a rapid inner pause in that moment, shift to coherence. Now we've completely changed the dynamics between the heart and brain, where the heart's sending a coherent rhythm, which creates brain synchronization, opens up our frontal cortex. It's not the exact term, but so now we have more options available. One of my mentors, guy Carl Pribram, very famous neuroscientist. So he's the guy who actually coined the term executive functions for the frontal part of our brain. And what he basically says that part of our brain really gives us, well, it's not just him, but is what we call foresight. The ability to understand how our actions now affect the future. Right. So that's what
because
gets
we're thinking from this more responsive state versus reactive state.
Well, yeah. Well, in other words, the part of our brain is what I'm saying is the frontal cortex. One of its main functions is foresight.
Yeah.
Right. So foresight gives us a lot of really important capacities that as humans that a lot of our beloved, pets don't have, and animal friends. They have great memory of the past. So what's foresight? Well, it's not only understanding how our actions and behaviors now affect the future, but planning, goal setting, appreciating that we've accomplished a goal, right? Abstract thinking. These are all parts of that frontal cortex and these executive functions that result in foresight. So that's what gets taken offline when we're in that inhibited state.
I'm curious, with this type of work that you've been involved in for so many years, if that goes further for you, if that part of the foresight, if that ever becomes a place where our heart center is, or becomes our oracle in some sense, being able to kind of predict the future.
Absolutely. And that now we cross into another, this is really basic heart brain physiology I've been talking about. We've also done a number of experiments. And let me, before I go there, one of the most common things that over the years we hear from, many, actually probably millions of people now that have learned and practiced HeartMath, but one of the more common things we hear is, God, my intuition is like radically different. I mean, noticeably. And then part two is synchronicities, right? Because if we're following our intuition, that's what allows for synchronicities.
Okay.
Right. So I'm going back a number of years. So we started doing some very rigorous laboratory-based studies on intuition.
Beautiful.
And long story short, I mean, many studies and even meta-analysis is now in this work. So this is very scientific what I'm saying without going into that language. Basically, what we've found is that in these laboratory experiments that we can kind of set up and control very rigorously, is that we were able to trace the flow of intuitive information. And we set up these things where a future event's going to happen. It's impossible to know what it is. Right? But the heart is the first system to shift and give you a pre-stimulus signal. The heart sends a measurably different neural signal to the brain. You get a brain response all before the future thing happens. Then once that happens, you get a change to the descending nerves, I'll call them, to the body. So the gut feeling, the hair on the back of the neck, all before the future event. And what we've also shown in those experiments, if we're in a heart coherent state before these experiments, that information channel between the heart and brain is significantly more opened up, and you get much more this inner intuitive response.
The clarity.
Yeah. So what I'm really saying here is, well, in a kind of a simple way, is that what the philosophers and most of the religions, great religions on the planet, have been saying all along, right? Because the most common denominator, by the way, across all the religions, whether that's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, is that the heart. Buddhism weighs into this. Sufism is that the heart is that doorway to our larger self. The heart's been associated with love and wisdom for ages, forever, right? Well, what this research is basically showing is they've been right all along. We're just able to measure it scientifically now. So you asked Jade about heart intelligence. So this is more what I'm talking about now. So when we talk about heart intelligence, we're basically just suggesting here, well, I'm actually saying that more than a suggestion, but we'll keep my sign on, that the heart really is, especially what we call the energetic heart, that doorway, if you will, or that bridge to our, whatever you want to call it. Different cultures have different words. Here in the US, people tend to call it their spirit or their soul or their higher self. Here at HeartMath, we just call it our larger self, to take any religious, because I don't mean this in a religious context. I mean this in a literal scientific context, that we really do have a larger self that's operating in another frequency domain, if you will, that is kind of outside of time and space, which is what these experiments also show, and that the heart is that main bridge to that. So as we learn to be more coherent, that is like tuning an inner radio dial. So we're tuning more to our larger self, and so that really heart intelligence is our best friend. It's our inner GPS.
Right.
I mean, who do you talk to when you're talking to yourself? That deeper part of yourself. Who are you talking to anyway? Right?
Yeah.
With practice,
our heart center.
Yeah. Well, with practice, it becomes clearer and clearer for people the difference between the voice of the mind and that deeper voice of the heart.
Right. What is the practice that you recommend or use maybe yourself to get tuned in or attuned to your heart center?
Well, there's a whole set of HeartMath techniques that for me and a lot of the, I think, HeartMath trainers, what happens when you use these techniques is that it kind of becomes automatic. It's a way of life. But there's techniques like the simplest one is called heart focused breathing. It's where you just put your focus, you literally focus in the center of your chest. You're not trying to go inside and focus on the physical heart, but in the center, and you breathe through that area. Pretend you're breathing through the chest, and you breathe ideally at a rhythm about 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, at whatever rhythm is comfortable. And there's a reason for those two steps. Where we focus attention, we can cause changes in the body. We know that there's a whole industry founded on that called the biofeedback industry. We know where you learn and you focus attention, we can cause changes. In this case, we're wanting to shift the rhythm of the heart, coherent, so we're sending that signal to the brain. But breathing at that rhythm, that happens to be the resonant frequency of the communication system between the heart and brain. We actually have a literal resonant frequency. So when we're feeling good, like appreciation, compassion, and kindness, that is what takes us into our natural resonant frequency, which is coherence. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
totally makes sense. And it's something that's really hitting home for me currently, because I've been instructed and re-instructed and told over and over that I live too much in my brain, essentially, and need to get more heart-centered. And so just figuring out how to tap into that space and sit with myself, and not just because I can sit with my thoughts, I can hear all my thoughts and do that piece, but to really get focused on, how is my heart speaking to me, essentially.
Yeah. So it's learning and practicing these coherence practices, in essence, help open that, tune that inner radio dial and open that channel so that the voice of the heart becomes more distinguishable. A lot of people talk about the still small voice within, it's really not so. With a little bit of practice, what you find out is it's not so still or so small. It's just that the roar of our mind and emotions is so loud, right? That under the radar. But so there's a technique just for kind of designed for accessing the heart's intuition. It's called freeze frame. But there's many techniques like inner ease and attitude breathing, and these are all kind of core techniques that really help us do that. And it's really about using these kind of techniques throughout the day. So we're, one is called heart lock-in, is more of a heart meditation, but the majority of our techniques about how do we maintain our shift into and maintain coherence, which equals our inner composure, emotional stability, and improve mental function as we navigate through day-to-day life, right? Because I like traffic examples, right? There we are driving, on our way to wherever, the store, the haircut appointment, whatever, right? The traffic lights are all green, right? As my wife likes to say, the parking angel's out, there's the spot. Hey, it's easy to kind of be, going with the flow, but what happens when we hit the traffic jam and we're late?
Yeah.
We're pissed.
Right. So
we're chaotic.
We're pissed and impatient. What happens, even a couple of minutes of those feelings, even if they're not gagged out, sets in motion at least 1,400 biochemical changes in our body that deplete our energy, suppress the immune system, right? We've actually done studies on that. Just getting frustrated for a couple of minutes suppresses immunity for 6 hours.
Wow.
So this is when we're moving into that fight or flight mode, that angry mode.
Yeah, it didn't have to be. You're in a car. You're not necessarily fight or flight. You're just sitting there frustrated or impatient, right? So that's not going to make the traffic move any faster.
Yeah.
So a heart intelligent perspective might be, well, wait a minute. Let's do some heart focused breathing. Let's get coherent. Let's add energy to our system rather than depleting it. Right. Let's create a different set of hormonal patterns.
And the heart focused breathing is just breathing as if it's coming from the heart, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out.
Yeah, or whatever's comfortable, but you can start with that rhythm. But the whole point, I don't want people to be sitting there counting one, because that keeps you stuck in the head. But so it takes a little practice to where that rhythm becomes familiar. Then you're not sitting there thinking about counting.
Yeah, right. I really like that idea. My mom was just telling me last night that our family doctor said our entire family suffers from irritability.
That's so interesting enmeshment. I just read something actually on that, Jade. We'll talk about after the show, because I'm sure we'll have some guests on about that type of universal enmeshment of a feeling over a whole family. But I was going to say that this emotional intelligence or the heart intelligence is really a piece of the emotional intelligence theory or idea.
I would say it is way, way broader than emotional intelligence. I'm glad that the emotional intelligence books came out and all. Yeah. But if you really look under the hood of what we call emotional intelligence, it was neat marketing. All it's saying, that an emotionally intelligent person is somebody who's emotionally aware and well self-regulated. Right. That's emotional intelligence. Right. Yeah. Well, what gives us the power to actually regulate the emotions? It's not the mind.
No, I'd call it the inner watcher or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so now you're talking about the heart.
Right.
So heart
or the soul or however
Well, right. So heart intelligence isn't just, part of heart intelligence is first of all, the inner intelligence out of our own self-care to finally bring the mind and emotions into alignment and management with that deeper part of ourself. But it has the power to do that.
So then when sitting there and you're talking about this breathing technique, for instance, it's about essentially stilling yourself enough to witness the witness, to witness the inner watcher.
Or to listen, to hear.
Yeah.
So heart-focused breathing is just the first step. Breathing techniques have been around for thousands of years. If that were the answer to everything, we wouldn't have the world we do, right? So breathing, I even call it grandma's wisdom in a way. Because breathing is something we have conscious control of. I can choose to breathe at a slower, deeper rhythm, but most of our breathing throughout the day is unconscious. And we start feeling stressed. What do? We breathe faster and shallower.
Right.
But not necessarily aware of it, but that's what's going on. When we're feeling relaxed and good, we tend to breathe deeper and slower. Naturally, even though we may not be consciously aware of that. So bringing more consciousness in is something we can intervene with, self-choose to breathe slower and deeper in those moments. But what that does, the reason breathing techniques work, there's a lot of people don't understand this, is God, I don't want to go too much into the physiology. Well, let me just go a little bit here. So there are neurons in the lungs that when we breathe that are sensitive to stretch.
Okay.
So they increase their firing rate, and there's nerves that go up to the brain stem, we'll call it, the lower brain, that is where the cardiovascular and breathing systems all tie into, right? So they basically inhibit or slow down the flow of what we call parasympathetic or vagal activity to the heart. So heart rate increases. We breathe out, that's released, that activity increases again, so heart rate decreases. So in other words, our breathing rhythm is always one of the factors modulating the heart rhythm. One of many, but an important one. So whatever our breathing rhythm is modulating the heart rhythm. So when we choose heart-focused breathing, or take a few deep breaths, like grandma says, after you just fall down and skin your knee or something, right? You pick you up after you make sure blood's not squirting out and stuff. All right, breathe, honey, is what grandma says, right? Because we instinctively know that until we calm down emotionally, we're not going to be able to hear anything, or and the pain's going to be worse while we're all dealing with all the drama and all that going on. So the reason that works, though, is when we take those breaths, we are literally modulating the rhythm of the heart into a more coherent pattern. Now that's what's being sent up to all those brain centers, including the amygdala, which is our emotional, familiar, not familiar center, right? And so that takes some of the intensity out of that emotion, that reaction. But so what we've done is we've lowered, let's say it's in a stress context or a stress reaction, we've lowered the intensity of it, but it's still the same emotion, just running at a lower level. You follow what I'm saying? So the more advanced step then is to say, okay, well, I'm feeling, not that frustration or this is a bad thing. It's why we just call them depleting, because that's the effect they literally have physiologically, right? But now we can shift that into a regenerative emotion. Right? So we have a lot more power to choose our emotional diet than people ever imagine or believe.
I like that emotional diet.
Yeah, we just never been taught how to do it. Right? But it takes, it's not that hard, but it takes practice. I mean, yes, it is, but no, it's not. But we have to want to do it, and put some energy out to learn how to do it. But then it becomes our new, what we call baseline or normal. And that's what elevates consciousness.
Right.
And that's I know beautiful. HeartMath talks about, the 3 categories: personal, social, and global. Can you talk to us about how those are all interconnected through the global field? Yeah,
well, so everything we've been talking about so far is more personal coherence
and
self-regulation. Well, I'm going to, I'm not sure how much time we have here, but I'll go to the social a little bit. I won't go into a lot of the science, but whenever the heart beats, whenever you put electrodes across the body, we want to measure your electrocardiogram, right? You put the 2 electrodes across, or we want to measure your brain waves, you stick some electrodes on your head. What's being measured is electricity. That's why it's called the electrocardiogram. So we are literally measuring the flow of current being generated, in this case, by the beating heart, which is by far the largest source of rhythmic electrical activity in the body. Right? Big time, bigger than anything else. So whenever you have a flow of electrical current, physics 101, you create a magnetic field, right? Electrodes don't see that. That's measured with a different device called a magnetometer. And so the field generated by the beating heart, the current flows are strong enough, you create a magnetic field electric and magnetic fields are quite different, by the way. And one of the properties of magnetic fields is they easily penetrate things. That's why your cell phone will work inside. Before I was a psychophysiologist, I used to work for Motorola as a communication engineer. Something I know a little bit about. Right. So we often use electromagnetic fields to carry information. That's how your cell phone talks to the cell tower. Right. We create a carrier wave, as it's called, and then that carries the information, your voice, the picture, your text, whatever. It turns out the heart's magnetic field is the same way. It's carrying information, probably about many things we don't fully understand yet, but for sure about our emotional state. We can actually measure that. So we can put a device out here, a number of feet from the body, and measure the heart's magnetic field and decode that and seeing that it's carrying patterns that reflect our emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can measure a brainwave with that same instrument about an inch away.
Mm.
Feet, inch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So clearly the heart is the big player energetically.
Yeah.
Right. So when we talk, gets into social coherence,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because and we've done a number of experiments now in our own lab, but others independently as well, have shown that when we're in a heart rhythm coherent state, the information in our magnetic field being carried by it is also more structured and coherent.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when we're in studio for these interviews, we feel really successful with the interview and really connected to the other person in front of us because we're in their electromagnetic space.
Well, maybe, or what if somebody comes in and they're kind of upset and just got bad news?
That's happened.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So the information being carried isn't just always
positive. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. But when we're in a heart coherent state, yes, it is. Mm. And that experiments have been now that even, literally done that show that even if another person doesn't know what's going on, they're in our coherent field environment. It has a uplifting effect on them measurably.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, you can think of this as your personal field environment.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's literal. It's measurable. Mm-hmm. But everybody knows this intuitively, or most people do. Mm-hmm. Right.
But a lot of people don't realize, I think, that where their heart is at, it, like you're saying, it goes out of our body, and it's those around us, like especially children, they are affected by our heart coherence.
Yeah, certainly children, but not just what I'm really saying here. In this, it's not just a hypothesis. We've proven this, right?
Yeah.
That there's an energetic communication, or dance, that's always going on between people. Mm. When we're in local proximity anyway, and that's can be measured, and that it's communicating information oftentimes at a subconscious level, but it is affecting and biasing our thoughts, our perceptions, our trust, untrust of that person.
So when we did that global meditation that I heard you speak at, all of our hearts, using that as an example, what is that? How did that affect the global?
Okay. So I just wanted to give that preamble because that's important to understand, to kind of connect the dots.
Yeah, the social piece is important for sure.
Okay, so all right, I'll try and be non-sciencey as I can here. So we've talked about how we have a magnetic field, right?
Yeah.
Measurable. Well, so does Earth. We all know that, right? It's called there's multiple fields, but one I'll talk about first is called the geomagnetic field. That's what our compasses tune into, right? The North and South Pole of the Earth, right? So so if we travel back in times, as back when we were in school in science class, did you get to dump iron filings on a glass plate and put a magnet under it?
No, we didn't.
Yeah,
but
man, you were.
I know.
You were right. That's too bad. Well, most people did. You can try it sometime. We'll watch a video of it. There's all kinds of.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about it before, so I get the gist of it. I've seen videos of it.
Right. So you can see these magnetic field lines in that example. But Earth's magnetic field is the same way. So you might probably heard me talk about this before then. Those field lines, magnetic field lines, literally act like the guitar strings. And when you pluck them, they vibrate. So the field lines of Earth are really long, so they have a lower frequency vibration. So just like on our guitar, if you change the tension or the length of the string, you change its what? Note, frequency, pitch,
key.
Yeah, Earth's the same way. And what's plucking the field lines of Earth is the solar wind rushing by, right? And Earth is turning in that. So the field lines are vibrating. Well, one of the primary resonant frequencies, all of the resonant frequencies, the range of them overlap in the same rhythms as the heart and autonomic nervous system. Well, one of the primary frequencies is a frequency called 0.1 hertz. That's frequency language, or a cycle that happens every 10 seconds. Now, remember I suggested breathing in 5 seconds, out 5 seconds?
Yes.
That's a 10-second rhythm.
Okay.
Right? 0.1 hertz. So when we're in a heart coherent state, the heart rhythm is oscillating at the same frequency as the
It's
primary
Earth.
resonant frequency of Earth.
Wow.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. So back
So
to
that's how
science
we're very
class.
much interconnected to
Yeah.
the
So
planet.
back one more piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Back to science class again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Mercedes, that you were so deprived.
I know.
Well, hopefully you got to play with tuning forks.
I did.
Yeah.
All right. So
I have some right behind me.
great. So you know that most people have seen examples of this where you tap one fork and the other one, if it's tuned to the same frequency, starts to vibrate, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's showing resonant coupling. That when two things vibrate at the same frequency, you transfer energy and information between them.
Mm-hmm.
So with our tuning forks, there's air molecules that are mediating that effect, but it works exactly the same way with magnetic fields. You just don't need the air molecules, right? So how do we know that? Well, surrounding you right now, both of you, or me here, how many cell phone magnetic fields are around us?
An insane amount going through the air.
They're all invisible here now.
Right.
So if I get my phone out, my little prop here,
Mm-hmm.
how does my phone get the information from those invisible fields?
It's in a specific frequency.
Well, we tune
Mm-hmm.
it. It's kind of like a referencing our inner knob. Well, here we have a literal kind of inner knob we adjust digitally these days to adjust the receiver to be the same resonant frequency as the one that we want to talk on. As soon as we do that, boom, we are now transferring all that energy and information from that particular magnetic field frequency into our cell phone and having our conversation.
What about
Sorry,
go ahead.
So the main point is when we transfer energy and information magnetically, when they're the same frequency. So what I'm really saying here, there's a whole other set of magnetic waves that I haven't talked about, but basically our hearts and brains and another set of magnetic waves are vibrating at the same frequency of Earth.
Right.
So basic physics principles we all learned in grade school probably these days is showing us how we can transfer energy and information between our hearts and brains and the Earth's larger fields.
Because Earth is our mother. It's almost proof of it. Hey, I have a question on that. Sorry, Jade, I know you might move us off of this though. So I wanted, before we do move, when we talk about, we hear Elon Musk wanting to populate Mars and things like that. When we talk about moving away from Earth, what does that create in you? Do you have any kind of insight on what that is all about and how that might fare for us?
Well, I have some insights. Another one of my mentors, a guy named Franz Hallberg, who's the guy who literally coined the term circadian rhythm.
Oh.
He just passed away a couple of years ago now. He was published many papers on how when we live within the Earth's energetic environment. So some of the magnetic fields I've been talking about are the energetic environment.
Right.
And how when those are disturbed or the different rhythms in them, how that affects us and our health and outcomes. But in his later years, what he was saying is, look, we have the biological rhythms we do because we evolved in these rhythms of the Earth.
Wow.
We were in sync with the Earth all along, through evolution. And that's why we have these rhythms. And it's, I didn't go into this, but a bunch of other studies we've done and others as well are showing that it's to our great benefit to be in sync with the Earth, with the Earth's rhythms for a lot of reasons, right?
We call that grounding, right?
Well, not necessarily. I'm talking about something a little bit different than like a grounding technique or walking on the Earth without shoes, which is also good things to do. I'm talking about something a little bit different here.
Okay.
But anyway, so the reason that I'm saying this to help answer your question is Mars does not have a magnetic field.
Okay.
In fact, we need to really appreciate Earth's magnetic field because without it, Earth would turn into Mars very quickly. So the magnetic field of Earth is the shield, right, that keeps the solar wind from blowing our atmosphere and all the water away.
That's the only reason we exist.
Well, yeah, without the magnetic field, life, at least as we know it, would not exist on Earth.
What about, like you brought up the...
I'm sorry, Jay, but you understand why I'm sharing that? You asked about Mars.
Yeah.
So we're trying to send people to a place with no field. And so some of my other colleagues are totally convinced that we have to have the magnetic field environment for healthy function. In fact, one of them is a NASA scientist who is kind of doing a lot of lab work to more or less prove that for space travel, even, we have to recreate the natural fields we live in the space stations and space for long. We travel outside of the Earth's field, that will be critical for even basic healthy function.
Wow.
So anyway,
I'm so glad I asked you that question.
Sorry, Jade, I didn't mean to cut you.
Oh, no, it's okay. I am wondering with like, you know, the EMF waves from cell towers, all of our Wi-Fi routers, you know, next to our beds and our phones in our pockets.
Yeah.
Does that mess with our magnetic field or keep us from being able to be healthy?
I can't say that it messes with our magnetic field because that's produced by biological systems, beating hearts and neurons thing. You know, and it's not a topic that I know a little bit about, but not one. There's so many opinions on it that no matter what I would say there, I would upset somebody probably.
It's okay. We upset people all the time on here.
Yeah. Well,
there's a disclaimer at the end of the show.
Well, one thing I will share with you though.
Yes, please.
Is that what a lot of people don't realize is that the sun itself generates a very strong, relatively speaking, frequency of 2.8 gigahertz called the F10.7 or solar radio flux.
And that affects human activity.
Well, big time.
Yeah.
Right? But in a good way. Right? It's a natural 2.8 gigahertz, by the way, is the same frequency as Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So we live and we've evolved and from the time we were born, right now we are living in a radiation field of 2.8 gigahertz from the sun.
Okay.
Which we need, which is necessary.
Which is necessary, and when we've started showing studies that when that's increased in its amplitude, it varies with the solar cycles and things, we feel better.
Right.
We have increased variability, which is a sign of better health, better sleep, better cognitive functions. So a lot of these, things we live in a sea of anyway, naturally, that kind of taco some of the stuff we're talking about.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying that Wi-Fi is different.
Right.
It's a natural signal. It's modulated in different ways, but,
Or to keep all your electronics by your head at night or any of those things. But
yeah, I mean, so I'm not afraid of my cell phone.
Right. I noticed you keep it in your pocket.
And at the same time, if I'm going to be talking a lot, I use a headset.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to live under a, mega 100,000 volt power line.
Right.
60 hertz. But I'm not scared of the electricity that's running my TV and.
Yeah. And I know you talked about solar activity. You talked about when it's low, that's when there's more, is it like maybe homicides or like,
Well, okay, I'd get you into a whole other topic, but the solar activity. And here's again, place where a graph is worth 1,000 words. So I have to give credit to really who's considered now the father of what's called the science of helobiology. Helo meaning sun, right, in this case. And his name is Alexander Chesovsky, and he was a Russian astrophysicist who got drafted into World War I, so a long time ago. And so he was keeping one eye on solar activity because that's what his field of study was, right? But what it appeared to him, being in the middle of a war, is that when there were more solar flares, solar activity, that people down here on Earth just kind of got stupid, right? I mean, there were bloodier battles and, mistakes and all those things. So it got him curious. So after the war, he did an exhaustive study of human history and went all the way back to as far as we had solar cycle data at that time, which was 1749. And basically did this amazing what these guys did back before internets and things. But anyway, very rigorous work and made a plot that showed the number of major human events that happened every year from 1749 up to 1926 when he published this work. So lots of cycles. And so you see this kind of sine wavy looking thing with variations. And then he plotted the solar cycle right by it. And they're almost exact overlays. It's shocking.
And by solar cycle, you mean what exactly?
Okay, so a solar cycle is about a 10.5 to 11 year cycle.
Okay.
And basically, they used to count it in the old days, the number of sunspots. The sunspot is associated with a solar flare. or coronal mass ejection, as we call them now. And basically that's shooting out lots of high energy particles and plasma streams from the sun. But the sun is always doing that. It's always radiating these high energy particles. That's what creates the solar wind. That's traveling, by us on a quiet day, about 1 million miles per hour. So basically the sun has a cycle of more and more of these solar flare events. That's just 10.5 to 11 year cycle. So it gets at its peak and then quiets down to its minimum and so on. So at the peaks of these, then a later researcher came along when they had data from much farther back than through ice cores and things like that of the solar cycles, and did another study of human history and found that the start of wars through all of recorded history start within 80% of them start in a very narrow area around these solar cycle peaks. When there's the most energy, so at a peak of a solar cycle, there's more energy being radiated by the sun in things that we don't see, like X-rays and ultraviolet and solar radio flux that I was talking about. So he basically, Chesovsky created what he called an index of mass human excitability.
This is mind-blowing.
Now so that may sound like it's bad and the sun's out to get us. No. So other research has shown during exactly those same time periods of the peaks is the greatest periods of human flourishing. So the way I would suggest you think of it,
the summer,
not
the
summer,
bountiful time, the fruitful time.
Yeah, and these again are 10-year cycles, right? 10 cycles. But when at those peaks, there's measurably more energy being radiated. That the Earth lives within the sun's magnetic field, literally, right? So that energy is then kind of stepped down into the Earth's energetic systems, and we live within that, so down into us. So we have more energy. So if you're unself-regulated and not very aware, and you're a politician, you go start wars, right? Or if you're more self-regulated and aware, kind of following your heart's intuitive guidance, you invent new things, you develop collaborations, you flourish.
Yeah, that to me correlates directly to like shamanic wisdom that speaks about the cycles of the earth. And when I'm talking about summer, whether it's a 10-year cycle of the solar flare, which would be essentially a global summer.
A good way of putting it.
That this correlation of summertime, because we think about summer, if you study the Greek gods or anything like that, the summer goddess is always the one that brings the most bountiful, fruitful trees and
springing forth. Right?
Everything is ready to be embodied or flourishing at that time. So that's really it's pretty cool that we're all just dealing with these cycles and we're so interconnected within them.
So the solar cycle is kind of a longer rhythm, 10 years, but then we've got lunar rhythms, weather, the annual rhythms, like you're saying, summer, spring, winter, so on. These are all cycles that all have effect.
Yeah. Is there something to the retrogrades in the midst of all of this too?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Seems like it sometimes.
Yeah, it must be, or a placebo. So we're coming to the end of the show. I know we're running out of time with you, but we have a magic mob question. Becky asks, how can this be applied to what's going on today with the coronavirus?
Oh, it's so many ways. In fact, we've been doing a series of shows on Awake TV actually around this called Navigating with the Heart. It's conversations for these challenging times. So if we're talking about these times of the coronavirus, there's two things comments I'd like to make relative to that. I mean, from one perspective, what we see on the news, there's probably more love, compassion, care going on than maybe ever before. Right? And all the outpouring for the frontline workers, not just nurses, but all. I mean, you think of all the delivery drivers and all the people that are in law enforcement, first responders that are doing their thing here, and a lot of them dying from doing this. But at the same time, it's not probably, an amplified fear going on as well. So that's one of my calls to action here is to consider what we're feeding the field.
Yes.
Our own personal field and our global field. So during these times, in fact, the fear virus can even outweigh the harm of the actual physical virus in some ways. So we're doing a lot of different, not just meditations, which is great, but actually in the trenches, how do we help people use these self-regulation techniques to manage that fear virus? Because all that does, if it's unmanaged. Now, we talk and trying to help people understand the difference between managed concern, right? Because we don't want to be stupid. But yes, we need to be managed concern and do, protect ourselves and do the right things. But if that crosses over into fear, that's the exact kind of emotions that take our nervous system into incoherence. And the study I mentioned earlier in the show, I said, when we're just a short period of being frustrated or in a depleted emotion suppresses immunity for 6 hours. So if we've got constant fear running, we watch the news one time a day and there it goes, and then again, right? All what we're doing is suppressing our own first line of defense against the virus in immunity. Right. And it's not a very fun way to live, So So
feeding the field.
I love that. You talk about the shift and lift techniques too, when it comes to feeding the field.
Exactly. So there's a number of techniques. A lot of them in fact, we're giving a lot of things these days through this. And there's one of our core courses that, was supposed to be our income for the year. We're giving away.
I saw that.
Called the HeartMath Experience. And we go into a lot of these key techniques. It's better to learn them there than me trying to, explain it rounded off way. That's free right now. And you can go to heartmath.org. So we're giving away a program for kids. We've given over 100,000 of them away now already through this virus period for younger children, for parents to do at home. But then for adults, it's called the HeartMath Experience. So I think it's heartmath.org/HME for HeartMath Experience. But anyway, if you get to our website, heartmath.org, you can find either of those free programs.
Beautiful. So there's a few short questions we like to ask everyone who comes on the show. And the first one is, if you could hug your younger self right now, what would you say?
It's going to be all right. Follow your heart.
How old are you when you needed to hear that?
Well, I actually have my first childhood memory is very similar to that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. That's a whole other story, but I had a download from my larger self. Sitting in a little Methodist church. But anyway,
Oh, beautiful.
Beautiful.
If you could have the whole world read one book, which would it be?
I'm biased here, but it would be Heart Intelligence.
Heart Intelligence. Okay. I haven't heard of that one. That's exciting.
If you could whisper one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
Follow your heart and take it seriously. Have the courage to follow it.
Before we let you go, where can people find you and HeartMath online? Is there an app, or do they just go to the .org?
Well, there are several apps, yes, but heartmath.org would be the main place. And there's a new app called the Global Coherence app.
Okay.
So we have a technology that allows us to measure our heart rhythm and train ourselves into coherence or see how coherent or non-coherent we are. Practice the techniques to shift into coherence so that we know what that feels like and can do it, when we're out in the world. And the Global Coherence app allows us to measure the literal coherence of groups. It could be your family, it could be, a work group, or the global group, as we call it. So we're organizing regular events to where we all get coherent together and measure the global community and how much coherent heart energy we're feeding into the global field.
Cool.
So if anyone wants to get involved in that,
that's
Global
so
Coherence
cool.
app. So you just go to whatever, the either Google Play or the Apple Store and search for Global Coherence app. And
Awesome.
And you don't have to have a pulse sensor to use it. It's got a map showing where people are around the world. It's really cool.
That's so cool.
If you want to really get involved at a deeper level, then you can get one of our sensors and measure your HRV. And so you can do that. There's apps for doing that at the personal level. But the Global Coherence app does it both for your personal and the global group and any that group you want to set up.
Can people with like an iWatch or, any of these technologies that do heart rate measuring, does that help?
No, not yet. We wish it did. So as I mentioned, measuring HRV is a lot more involved in heart rate. And so far we've tested many, many things. many like wrist devices and things.
Yeah, not yet.
We would love if they,
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
but we're not there yet. So basically our pulse sensor clips on your earlobe, and it's a very high
Okay.
device for really accurately measuring HRV.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank
Well,
you
it was
so
fun,
much.
guys.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. We learned so much, and I hope our listeners did too. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
being with us and for figuring out how to take all of your very extensive knowledge. Both Jade and I have been following you for a while and listening to your stuff for a while. So we know you have the extreme depths of scientific knowledge in your head. And so thank you for trying to transmute it to our more basic level today. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Being a light.
Well,
Okay.
you guys have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you.
And remember to pause and ask yourself, what am I feeding the field?
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Rollin.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So Rollin, we will send you all the promos, of course, and let you know whenever this is going to air, and any information you might need on your end for that. We will.
Are you guys in touch with Claire?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, because she's your,
Yeah.
you know, I
And-
could promo something my life depended on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, take care, guys.
Okay. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. I love that. What am I feeding the field in the shift and left technique? But the solar activity is really mind blowing.
I know, it's nuts, and I wish people could see the graph so you could always look him up and see what he's talking about there, because the way that they overlie, and it's like almost an identical match. What he's talking about there with these big times where humans act out and flourish happen to be right during the solar flares. So it's very interesting stuff. Yeah.
And I love his magic trick, the breath from the heart. But
yeah. What's your magic today?
Oh, mine is it's a visualization around the heart. So when I am tuning into my chakras and trying to align them and make sure they're all how I want them, when I get to my heart, I do a visualization that I wanted to share as a magic trick that everyone else can do. Mm-hmm. So basically, and this is like, you could see this as intuition or imagination, but either way, it's going to be beneficial because you're just tuning in, So what I do is when I imagine my heart, I just kind of like take and, I don't know if inventory would be the right word, but I just kind of like check out its condition. I see how it's feeling. And, whatever you see on your right side of the heart represents your masculine, and then your left side represents your feminine. So that's something to pay attention to as well, is like when you look at your heart or you tune in and see how you're feeling, pay attention to the sides and how different they are. But what I do is I visualize my heart, and then I imagine pouring like warm water over my heart and just like cleansing off anything that doesn't feel right. And I kind of give it like a loving little, tender massage. And I just like spend time with my heart. And sometimes like I'll see like a hard shell on part of it, or sometimes I'll see like, just like some sort of visualization that's like representing the condition of it. And I just, with the warm water and with the massage, I just kind of like remove that from my heart and just kind of visualize it in the condition that I want it to be in. So it sounds kind of like, childlike in a way, but it works for me. And it just, in a way, I feel like it helps me to just sit still and consider what condition my heart is in as well. So
yeah, I like that. I don't think it sounds childlike at all. I think it's just a moment of silence with yourself, and that's so important, and checking in.
And it's interesting what you might see when you do that. When you really tune in, you'll be surprised sometimes how you're like, oh, I do feel that way,
Yeah, or what comes up.
Yeah.
My magic trick's super similar. So according to shamanic healers, your heart is the center of your multidimensional being and can act as your medium for connecting with the higher angelic realms. And when we're able to tune into our heart center, it can become our own personal oracle, which we were talking about earlier, our own personal oracle on our personal path towards spiritual awakening. So this magic trick is about using our heart center as a yes or no oracle to receive yes or no guidance whenever you need it. So firstly, when, we kind of talked about this with Rollin a bit, but when we talk about tuning into your heart, we're talking about your heart center, your heart chakra. So it's not so much your physical heart as it is your energetic heart, right? So what we want to do is we want to ground ourselves in this moment by sitting quietly and taking a few deep breaths. You can use the, what does Rollin call his breath practice? The heart, what is it? Heart focused breathing.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't remember that. The heart focused breathing. But just take a few deep breaths and then put your left hand, since our left hand is our receiving hand, over our heart, which will help us to listen and attune to our heart center. And then we ask a yes or no question and we listen for a response. And the response might come as a feeling of contraction or expansion, since what we're doing here is we're tuning into the energetic quality of our hearts. So when we ask an obvious no question, like should I order pizza for dinner tonight? You might feel an energetic decrease in your heart center. And adversely, when you ask a question where the answer is yes, like is taking a walk in nature and in the sunshine a good idea today, you'll feel a warmth and expansion in response. So this does take some practice. This is all really related to what Rollin was talking about today. So I love that it's kind of just a reiteration of some of the tips he gave us, but it does take some practice and some true openness. But I think when we can be willing to sit with our hearts and tune in like this often, and when we can trust ourselves and our heart centers enough to have this ability to be our own oracle, we gain a powerful insight and a tool for divination and honing our intuition. So I invite you to try it. That's my new magic trick I'm trying to incorporate.
I like
lately.
that. I've never heard of that, surprisingly, and I'm gonna try that out.
Apparently it's much more trustworthy than using a magic 8-ball. So please go with that.
That's funny. All right, Magic Mobbers, thank you so much for tuning in and taking this journey with us. If this episode held some magic for you, please share it with your friends and family. This would mean so much to us. And don't forget to join us on our Instagram page at The Magic Hour and let us know what your favorite episodes have been so far. We appreciate all of your feedback and want to know what's lighting you up.
Yes, and we release a new episode every Monday, so you can catch us again next week or go listen to some of our past episodes in our podcast library now. We'll meet you there. Until then,
be a light.
Be a light.